I'm Dick Snyder, the chair of the board of the Restorative Justice Institute, and welcome you on behalf of the board and staff. It's great to have you here. There are a lot of folks still parking, but we're going to get going here. I have some good news and some bad news. I'll start with the bad news. We face an extraordinary threat in our society. In the last 30-some years, our nation has experienced an exponential increase in punishment. Ours has become a culture of punishment. As I'm sure you know, the U.S. incarceration rate is the highest in the world. But our punitive approach goes far beyond just those whom we incarcerate. Children who act up in school are too often suspended or expelled or even charged with a crime for such minor infractions as talking back to a teacher. Many families utilize punishment as their default key. Incredibly, punishment often prevails in the treatment of victims as well. Women who've been raped are told they were asking for it and then shunned by others. Women who are abused are told it's your fault for remaining in the relationship. The poor are told they're poor because they're lazy. In our culture, both those who harm and those who are harmed too often suffer under the brutal hand of punishment. And in our mad rush to punish, we have created a culture in which it is easy to treat those who are different from us as other. People of color, Muslims, the poor, those who commit a crime, even some victims are considered a different order of being. We've made them into other. We've lost sight of our interrelatedness. We've severed the umbilical cord that binds us together. We've forgotten that we are inextricably one. And the fabric of our society is dangerously unraveling. But there is good news. Restorative justice is a movement that is seeking to turn the culture of punishment on its head. It's about restoring relationships, rebuilding community, and healing harm wherever it occurs. While restorative justice has been primarily focused on law enforcement, the courts, and corrections, there's an increasing awareness that our schools, workplaces, homes, and communities are venues in which harm is done and healing is needed. We're also learning that restoration and healing takes many shapes. Each person, each incident, each community offers its own distinctive opportunity to rebuild broken relationships. So restorative justice is not a cookie-cutter approach to healing the harm. There's no one-size-fits-all. And since there's no single approach to restoring lives and communities, we have much to learn from each other. That's why we're here today. What we are seeking is what the ancient Hebrews called justice, by which they meant making things right. We have an unprecedented opportunity before us. We can act to transform our culture of punishment and alienation to one of true justice. And to do this, we need each other. Together, those of us both inside and outside the agencies, organizations, and systems of our state. Together, we can forge a path that changes the direction of our culture and the very notion of justice itself. The task is daunting. It will not occur overnight. There will be missteps along the way. But it can be done. Maine can become a restorative justice state. So let's get to work. Thank you.
I can't resist this. I'm kind of a visual kinesthetic person. Could we just do a little wave? Can we start over here? Ready? And back the other way? Yes! Okay. This is really very exciting that we're all here. Thank you for coming. I've got a lot of AV stuff going on, so bear with me. Hi, Ansley. I'm pretty pumped to be here today. I've always wanted to do a TED Talk, so thank you for the opportunity. To my mind, a good TED Talk combines a couple of cogent human interest stories with some hard-earned wisdom and some relevant facts. And I hope this is your sense of what a good TED Talk is as well, because that's what I'm going to try and do. My name is Sarah Maddox, and I work for the Restorative Justice Project of the Mid-Coast. My title is as the Court Diversion Coordinator, or it was when I was hired in November of 2011. Since then, it's evolved. These days, my business cards say Restorative Conferencing Program Coordinator. In the coming 15 minutes, I aim to ground us in restorative philosophy, share a bit about how that philosophy translates into Restorative Justice Project and its programs, and then outline what I see as the value of restorative justice for me and what I think it offers to us all. As many of you undoubtedly know, restorative justice is a philosophy. It's a philosophy about harm, a philosophy that recognizes that in the course of daily living, people are going to make mistakes. They're going to make poor choices. Sometimes they're even going to break the law. In a restorative paradigm, these offenses are understood as offenses to relationships. When somebody messes up, they hurt another person or many people, sense of safety and sense of trust are damaged, sense of community cohesion deteriorates. And the important thing in a restorative paradigm is to ask what happened as opposed to why did you do that? What rules or laws were broken as opposed to why did you do that or what rules and laws were broken? To ask what do you need and how can the harm be repaired as opposed to what punishment is warranted. Yes. Okay, the Restorative Justice Project of the Mid-Coast began as a concept in the mind of this guy, Dick Snyder, who you all met. He was working at the New York Theological Seminary and was asked to teach a master's degree course at Sing Sing Prison. The content of this course addressed harm, it addressed crime, it talked about restorative justice and how it can be applied for the betterment of us all. Dick came away from that experience so enthused, and I fact-checked this with him on Friday, that he resolved to bring restorative justice to a community context upon his retirement to Mid-Coast, Maine. In 2003, Dick joined with others at the UU Church in Belfast, members of law enforcement, Ray Porter, Scott Story, local government, brought people together, and this group began visioning what a comprehensive restorative justice project could look like, based in community. Dick and his colleagues went on to devise a nonprofit with a mission of promoting fundamental change in the nature of the justice system and in schools. This entity grew to involve 3 programs anchored in restorative philosophy and oriented along a continuum of addressing harm by working in the realms of prevention, intervention, and reintegration. The prevention arm of the project is dedicated to training and consulting on restorative practices implementation in schools and community organizations. The intervention arm serves victims and communities and both juvenile and adult offenders in Prosecutorial District 6, Waldo, Knox, Lincoln, and Sagadahoc counties. This program involves coordinating restorative community conferences between victims and offenders, those who have caused harm and those who have experienced it, to come together and share what has happened, who has been affected, and to collaborate in coming up with a reparative agreement, a means for how the affected person will have their needs met and how the person who caused the harm will work to make things right. The reintegration arm of the project serves residents at the Maine Coastal Regional Reentry Center, folks who are incarcerated and who are at high risk for recidivating. Residents take a class in restorative justice, and increasingly, infractions that occur within that facility are addressed in a restorative circle format. An overview of RJP programs would not be complete without mentioning the essential complement of the volunteer mentoring program. Though mentoring is not inherently a part of the definition of restorative justice, it is unimaginable for me to think about how we would be doing the work that we're doing without our incredible cadre of volunteer mentors. These are folks that we have trained, folks that live in the communities where they serve. Both the conferencing program and the reentry program utilize volunteer mentors, either in their work towards completing their reparative agreement, as in the conferencing program, or as they strive towards successful release from incarceration, as in reentry. Since its inception in 2004, the project has trained over 300 community members to work as volunteer mentors. Approximately 120 people are on our active list currently, and they cover a geographic span from Bangor down through Bath. 63 are actively mentoring. The Restorative Justice Project of the Mid-Coast was the first of its kind in Maine, a formal entity with paid staff, an ever-growing cadre of awesome volunteers and stakeholders who are dedicated to bringing this applied philosophy to communities in the Mid-Coast. I want to focus our attention for a moment in consideration of why this is important. Of course, there are hundreds of poignant examples, but I'm going to stick with one. I want to tell you about a young man named Chad. Chad was referred to RJP and the conferencing program in July of 2013 at the behest of the district attorney's office for an incident wherein he took his truck and stove up the ball field at Bristol Community School. He was bored and restless. It was late at night. The field was there. He had a truck. Chad was dismayed to learn pretty shortly thereafter that he had caused an estimated $40,000 in damage to that field. The conference with Chad involved him and his mom, the school superintendent, the principal, the athletic director, the head of maintenance, local law enforcement, and representatives from the community. At the conference, these folks impressed upon him how angry they were at the thoughtlessness of his act. They enumerated the serious and far-reaching consequences of his late-night spree. They detailed the many, many people affected, not just the head of maintenance who had worked there for some 30-plus years and took personal pride in the quality of that field, but also the school personnel who had to deal with the unwanted attention, logistics, publicity, the headache of it all. The scores of children who could no longer play there safely, not just the parents, not just the children, but the parents of those children who were forced to transport them an additional 20 minutes drive each way, each day, so that they could play soccer the coming season. Not only the parents, but also the boosters who lost revenue, the taxpayers who paid for law enforcement response, the school board members, and so on. We all know how it goes. Chad sat there in shame at the conference. He had very little to offer by way of explanation, except that he just wasn't thinking at the time, and he was desperately sorry. Over the ensuing 8 months, Chad worked hard to complete 100 hours of public service. He helped to paint the dugouts, he shoveled snow, he sold hot dogs and popcorn at the boosters booth. After the sporting events, he swept up, put chairs away, and come spring, he repainted the lines on the field. He worked hard to raise $3,500 to cover the cost of the school's deductible and all of the miscellaneous costs that insurance wouldn't cover. He wrote and sent a letter of apology to the school board and to the wider community, which was posted on the school website and in the newspaper. Gradually, that sense of shame eased. Gradually, life got better. At the closing a week ago, this group reassembled to review how Chad did and determine whether they were satisfied in bringing this case to a close. They shared how impressed they were with his diligence, noting the fact that he never once complained, even though the work was often dull and tedious. They suggested they would be pleased to have him continue working with him and that they would miss having him at the school. The head of maintenance choked back tears as he reflected that he had never once seen someone draw such perfect lines on the field. He admired Chad's craftsmanship. He went on to note that thanks to this process, he, the maintenance guy, the victim, had learned an important lesson from this process. For the sake of us all, he reflected, I have learned the importance of never giving up on someone. Turns out that this kid, who a year ago I so badly wanted to throttle, has made my life and the lives of many others much better over the course of the last year than they would have been without him. In court the following week, Chad had the benefit of having his felony charge reduced to a misdemeanor. The following day, he celebrated his 18th birthday. This past Friday, he graduated from high school. So what does it take to not give up on Chad? It requires an organized response to harm, wrongdoing, and crime. It requires resources to gather those affected people together. It requires the time and the generosity of a volunteer mentor. It requires opportunities for harm to be repaired that are smart, specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, timely. And this process significantly benefits from effective partnerships with law enforcement and the court communities. So what is gained by not giving up on Chad? First and foremost, there is the opportunity for victim healing and perhaps for a strengthened or restored hope in humanity. Then there's offender learning and opportunity for redemption, as well as promotion of meaningful, connected relationships within the wider community context. Instead of becoming a pawn of the justice system, an angry, marginalized kid with a felony charge on his record who felt like he had been done to by the system, Chad concluded this process feeling proud, at peace with his accomplishment and satisfied that he had done what he needed to do to make things right, that he could go forward and hold his head up in his hometown, not just for that week or that month, but for coming months and years. Then there's healing, of course, within the levels of family and the realm of community. When I asked all involved if I could share their story here today, they said without a moment's hesitation, yes, of course, please, people need to know. Please share our story. So does it make a difference? All of this feel-good stuff. I think that the numbers speak for themselves. So how did I get to be here? Like for many of us, that's a pretty convoluted answer. I grew up in Midcoast, Maine, with what I consider to be a fairly typical degree of insight into the fact that many of my peers had much less than I, and many had considerably more. It didn't go unnoticed by me that there were kids who screwed up and were never seen again. There were others who would disappear for a while, and then they'd reappear. There were the dumb ones and the unlucky ones. They're the ones who were always on the detention list or the suspension list. And there were those who it seemed like they should have been on there, but they weren't. It didn't escape me that people suffered. It didn't escape me that the punishment didn't really seem to address the harm that they caused. But I was honestly at a loss for how to address it. When I finished high school, all I wanted to do was leave small town Maine, where everybody knew everybody else's business. And I had no intention of coming back. My ramblings took me west and north, around the world and back again. Throughout, I was seeking a thread of social justice. I had a deep desire to work with people in settings that gave them the opportunity to be the best versions of themselves. I wanted this as much for myself as for others. This pursuit took me to northern Minnesota and to the Voyager Outward Bound School, literally located at the end of the road close to the Canadian border. At Outward Bound, we took people, a great preponderance of them kids, into the wilderness for varying lengths of time to work out cooperatively in a novel environment and to learn to work together with the overarching goal being to impress upon students the motto embraced by the school's founder, Kurt Hahn. Hahn said, "There is more in us than we know. If we could be made to see it, perhaps for the rest of our lives, we would be unwilling to settle for anything less." I spent 10 years at that base camp, and these were rugged, tremendous years for me. Deep in the heart of 2 million acres of wilderness with myriad groups of people that began as strangers and became family, we worked on what it meant to be human. In the varying onslaught of bugs, drought, rain, temperatures of 40 below, I started to gain insight into how we might alleviate suffering, the suffering that I had so long been witness to. I started to practice courage, the courage to address this suffering and this injustice through honest conversations and by providing individuals with the opportunity to truly take responsibility for their actions. It was at Outward Bound that I was introduced to the concept of restorative justice. It was there that I came across some ideas that were formative ones for me and that I'd like to share with you now. Our job is not to fix people. Our job is not to fix people. They're not broken. People are doing the best they can at any given time. Provided tools, constancy, and compassion, we can learn new ways to approach the world and one another. We can't know our upper limits. Joan Baez said, "Action is the antidote to despair." And go slow to go fast. Or put differently, more tortoise, less hare. There's always plenty of work to be done. More, in fact, than we can ever achieve. So it is essential to pay attention to doing quality work with what lies immediately in front of us. The future will come. We can't prevent this from happening, but we can prepare well for it. Then it came time for me to make a choice. Dedicate my life to that place and that work that I loved, or journey out in search of a spot where I could better apply the concept of act local, think global. This mattered to me, and it was hard to effect in the never-ending flux of students arriving and departing from our little bubble deep in the North Woods. It became clear. It was time for me to travel home. And so I did. In the summer of 2011, my husband Aaron and I paddled our canoe from the front door of our little cabin in northern Minnesota to the public landing in Belfast, Maine. It took us 4.5 months. We had no idea what we were going to do when we got there, maybe wait tables or wash dishes. Shortly after we arrived, I was sitting at the kitchen table with my mom, and she said, What is it that you want to do for work? I said, "Well, Mom, I want to work with angry kids. I want to work with apathetic kids. I want to help them communicate more effectively with their communities. I want to strengthen individuals' understanding of one another." "Like this?" she replied, and she pointed to a small ad in the local paper lying out on the kitchen table. It was an ad for an organization that I had never heard of before, the Restorative Justice Project of the Mid-Coast. It was an ad for a court diversion coordinator. And a couple of weeks later, I started my new job. So, why does it matter? It matters because people who have endured or experienced harm have the basic human right to express what they have experienced and to ask for what they need. It matters because individuals who have caused harm have the basic human right to understand whom they have affected and to work towards repairing that harm, to work towards regaining their dignity and their place in their community. It matters because all of us benefit when one individual has the opportunity to prove that they care. It matters because communities are made of a multitude of people, each one of us with our own story, each one of us causing and experiencing harm on a daily basis. Harm will happen. It's how we respond to it that's crucial. Restorative justice benefits us because it provides the opportunity to mend what is broken, to heal what is hurt, for people to gain insight into their actions and to strengthen conversations and connections between one another. Restorative justice offers each of us the opportunity to be the best version of ourselves. Restorative justice can look a whole host of ways, can be translated into many different community contexts. This project is simply where the Mid-Coast communities started from. We don't know exactly where we're heading, but we're heading there together, and the results matter. Informed by our own experiences, restorative justice is a rich gathering of wisdom. People don't need you to fix them. They need you to believe in them and to give them opportunities. It is not productive or life-enriching for any of us to spend much time suffering or bogged down by the everyday drudgery of life. In order for this movement to succeed here in Maine, it is imperative that we work together, that we go slow to go fast, that we share what we know, that we honor each relationship, and understand that every person adds value to the conversation at hand. I am ferociously proud to be doing this work with all of you. One person, one story, one conversation at a time. We are building better citizens and stronger, healthier communities. Thank you.
All right, so good morning. My name is Dan Kane. I'm with Volunteers of America, and I am the Director of Adult Community Justice Programs, which really probably doesn't seem like that means a whole lot to anybody but me. So in explanation of what I do is I oversee pretrial programs, pretrial supervision programs, and release programs in 4 counties, in Saginaw, Lincoln, Waldo, and Penobscot counties. And then I also oversee a small reentry program at the Two Bridges Regional Jail. And another thing that we do is something called the Alternative Sentencing Program, which I want to talk with you about today. So I want you to take a minute and indulge me in a slight scenario. I want you to think about yourself on any given warm Maine summer evening at a baseball game or at a wedding or maybe just out with some buddies or whatever. And you're having a good time, and you have 1, 2, 3 beers, and now it's time to go home. So in the car you go, driving along, everything's great, and then all of a sudden, blues. Okay, what's your first thought? Oh shit, right? Then you start running through your head, okay, I wasn't speeding, I didn't see a stop sign, and this isn't a one-way street, so I'm probably going to be okay. Officer comes to the window and says, "Excuse me, sir, do you know why I pulled you over?" "No, I really don't have any idea." "Well, your plate light was out." "Oh, I didn't even know I had a plate light." "Well, you do, and it's not working." "Okay, great." Sir, have you had anything to drink tonight?" "Uh-oh. I've had a couple. "Really? Well, if you don't mind, I'd like to conduct a couple of tests." "Okay, what are you going to do, say no?" So, you get it out of the car. The officer starts asking you to do a few things. First, he wants you to walk a straight line. That's not too bad. Then he wants you to stand on one foot, juggle 3 oranges, and recite the alphabet in Swahili. Right? So, your automatic response is, "Dude, I can't do that when I'm sober." Oh, now he's got you. So down to the police station you go. We're going to have an intoxilizer test, find out just how much you may have been drinking. And somewhere in the back of your mind, you remember from being in high school or college or something, somebody told you, whatever you do, don't take the test. They can't get you if you don't blow in the machine. That ain't right. I'll tell you now. So now, you've been caught for an OUI, and you've refused to take the test. This means for you if you get convicted of your first offense OUI, you're going to do 2 days in jail. 2 days in jail? What are you talking about, 2 days in jail? I'm a upstanding member of society. I'm a professional person. I'm not an alcoholic. I'm not a drunk driver. What do I got to go to jail for? Well, realistically, that's a pretty good question. You may not know it, and if you don't, you probably should. The county jail system in the state of Maine is in a critical situation right now due to overcrowding. There's just too many people in the jails for the bed space that's there. And a lot of the folks that are in these jails don't need to be there. It may be because they have mental health issues and they don't have any place else to go. It may be because they have some substance abuse issues and what they really need is treatment, not necessarily sitting in an 8x8. Or it may just be that they couldn't come up with the $250 it costs to get out. So, what do we do to help decrease this population? Well, if you're me, you do something called an alternative sentencing program. The alternative sentencing programs were originally designed specifically for OUI offenders. In lieu of spending their time in a jail cell, they have the opportunity to go to some other facility, a high school, summer camp, someplace like this, and do some community service work and not sit in jail. It's really a pretty good idea. Now, I got to say, I started doing this in 2001, and the idea was before my time. We can also do this with multiple offenders. Maybe we can do this with folks that have more than one OUI. They'll just spend a longer time sitting in this camp or school or whatever, which is also a great idea. Because these people are just like you. They're not hardened criminals. They're not alcoholics. Some of them are, but they're not all alcoholics. They're folks that made a really bad decision and have got themselves gummed up in the criminal justice system. They're not dangerous, and they don't need to sit in a jail cell. So, what we do, we run 2 programs a year in Saginaw County for first and second offenders. I run my programs together. And we also run 2 programs in Penobscot County, although this year I think we're going to run about 5, but that's a whole different story. So people come and they sign up, and I run through the whole list of information as far as their criminal history and when they got convicted and did they have a lawyer and medical background and everything. And they come to this, I hold them at a summer camp. They come to this big summer camp. And I usually have about 50 people on the first day. They all come in, they all get breathalyzed, all of their stuff gets searched. And they're kind of in a correctional setting. They don't have the freedom to just go wherever they want, do whatever they do. They have to follow the rules. Which, in the beginning, seems pretty bad to them. They've been taken away from their loved ones, their jobs. They're in a foreign place with a bunch of people they don't know. But when the program really gets going, good things start to happen. Because I don't have people come and just sit at a camp for a week, and we're certainly not fishing and going out in the canoes. We're there to do a couple of things. First of all, we're going to do some community service work. We're going to work at the camp itself. We're going to farm some people out to some towns, some other nonprofit agencies, and we're going to do some work. And we do a lot of work. Over the course of, I've been doing this for 12 years now, I can say that we've done over $1 million worth of community service work to towns, nonprofit organizations, and camps in the places where we're at. We've worked at churches, fire departments, schools, graveyards, all sorts of places. We built a giant bridge in a land conservatory one time. We replaced a whole walkway out at a lighthouse in Seguin. We have done lots of things. Little League baseball fields. And these folks work pretty hard. We start at 7 in the morning. They work until about 4 in the afternoon. And it could be everything from raking, painting, moving bricks, rocks, moving boats, putting docks in the water. We do all of it. And you would think that people would gripe about this. Like, what's up with all this work? But the reality is that they appreciate the work that they're able to do. They appreciate the fact that they get an opportunity to give back in some way. Because like I say, most of these people, they're not criminals. They're just folks that made a bad mistake, and they want to make up for it. I've never, ever, ever heard one person tell me that they resented the work that they had to do while they were at an alternative sentencing program. Now, they complain about other things like the food and where they had to sleep and the hard benches that they had to sit on. The really bad 1981 Denzel Washington movie I made them watch. But I've never had them complain about the work. And the people in the community that get the benefit of the work could not be more grateful. I literally have a drawer full of thank you cards, letters, pictures from the things that we've done, the things that we've built, thanking the folks that were at my program for all the hard work they did. And that's a great thing. But it's not enough. Because ultimately, we don't want these folks to make a bad mistake again. We don't want to see them again. Now, truthfully, I can't say that I've never seen people again. There have been those cases where I have somebody that comes in for a first offense and a couple years later, they're back for their second. So maybe we didn't get it to stick, but now I got another shot. So what are we going to do to try to make sure that these folks don't come back? Now, jail has sort of a built-in deterrent, right? Believe it or not, it's not really comfortable. Jail's not a great place to be. So you would think that the folks that go to jail, they get that deterrent. I don't want to go back there. But unfortunately, that doesn't always happen. So what am I going to do to make sure people don't come back? Well, after working all day, what I do is I sit everybody down every evening, and we have some educational pieces. We do about 4 hours of substance abuse education, and I really want to make sure that everybody understands, not just you, but the folks that are there, that it's education. It's not treatment. I'm not trying to treat you. I'm trying to educate you. I'm trying to get you to see that the way that you use substances may be contributing to you getting in trouble. I'm not telling you you're an alcoholic. I'm not telling you you need to stop drinking. What I am telling you is that you need to make better decisions when you drink. And one of those decisions should be not to get behind the wheel of a vehicle. And I have some professional folks that are good enough to come in and volunteer their time and help me spread that message. So that's great. But sometimes with the substance abuse piece, people are like, I'm not an alcoholic. I don't need this. I'm fine. Okay. I don't have a problem with that. So let's talk about your decision-making skills. So another night, we're going to spend 2 hours, and I'm going to bring somebody in, and he's going to talk about decision-making and being accountable for the decisions that you made. He's going to take you through the process of how you make decisions. He's going to make you realize that that was my decision, and I have to be accountable, and I have to face the consequences. People start cluing in a little bit. Oh, well, it isn't necessarily about the drink. It's about the choice I made afterwards. And that's all good. Then I have a state trooper come in, and he talks about OUI laws. And he explains what the law is, what he can arrest you for, what he can't arrest you for. But the best thing that he does is that he humanizes law enforcement. He's a really down-to-earth guy, and he comes in and he explains to these folks that he's a human being, and that every time he gets called to a drunk driving accident and he sees some dead kid or somebody maimed and hurt and laying bleeding on the street, that leaves an impression on him. He carries that with him wherever he goes. So he says, please, 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 now that I've explained to you what the laws are and how you're going to get in trouble, don't impact my life with your crash. I'm a human being too, which is a great thing. So through the program, if I want to bring it back to some restorative justice, we're doing a couple of things. We're getting people to be accountable for their actions, to take responsibility for them. And then we're also getting them to perform some reparation by the community service work that they do. Now, for anybody that manages a budget in this room, here's the best part. The alternative sentencing program doesn't cost the state, county, city, or agency a dime. What? Not a cent. Everybody that comes to the alternative sentencing program pays to be there. And it's not cheap, but they pay to be there. So we are doing a service for the entire state, really, because my program, even though it runs out of Saginaw County, I'll accept offenders from anywhere in the state. Doesn't matter where you're from. So the entire state, every county is getting the benefit of not gumming up their jails and having their offenders maybe learn a little something so that we're not in this situation again. So, how do I want to put this? The way I see this whole thing is that any one of you, anybody, can get that first offense OUI. And I will tell you that I have had people in my programs from all walks of life. Literally. I have fishermen. I have assistant district attorneys. I have waiters and waitresses. I have police officers. I've literally had just about every profession you could think of be in my alternative sentencing program. And every one of them has been appreciative of the opportunity to give back to the community and to not have to sit in an 8x8, either for a weekend or for a week. We're not the only ones that do this. We are the only private organization in the state that does it. Lots of the counties run their own alternative sentencing programs, which I applaud that the counties do that themselves. For the most part, they run first offender programs. A couple of the counties will run second offender programs. But when the county jails run them, they're fairly expensive. They staff them with their own staff, which usually means that they have to pay them overtime. Most of the food comes from the jail, which, if you're looking for a deterrent, there you go. So there's a lot of this happening throughout the state, and you don't necessarily hear about it that much. I would like to see more of it happen. What has happened a little bit is that the alternative sentencing program, which we used to call the OUI program, has kind of morphed because we've opened it up to not just OUI offenders, but folks with any nonviolent misdemeanor. And this has worked pretty well. We've had some pretty interesting folks come. We had a guy for practicing dentistry without a license, a couple guys for night hunting, tax evasion. But on the same tack, they're nonviolent, they're not criminals. Sure, they did something that wasn't smart, but do they need to be sitting in a cell 23 hours a day? No. So that's what we do. That's how we fit into this little restorative justice niche that we have. And I would be happy to take any questions. Okay, well, lucky for you, you're on break. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead. Well, sure. She asked if there was anything that could be implemented for folks that can't pay the fee. There could be. I know that for some people it is a barrier for them to be able to attend. And much like cash bail, which I'm not a fan of, the fee, is preclusive. I think that from our end, as an agency that does the program, there is a way to look into sometimes, we have a little money left over, and to sort of have a fund or a pool of money. And we could do maybe scholarships, for lack of a better word. And it would have to really be based on income and situation and all that sort of thing. But it's not out of the question, as far as our agency is concerned, to think about doing that. Yes? As far as I know, there is not a similar program for... the question was, is there a similar program for children? I do not believe so. I spent the first part of my career as a corrections officer at what's now the Long Creek Youth Development Center. And I know that there are kids there that sit for an inordinate amount of time waiting to go to trial, waiting to be adjudicated, and then once they get there and they're sentenced there, they can spend a long time there with no real way to figure out how they're supposed to get out. So I think that it could be done. I think that it would be challenging for the folks that were running it. But if somebody was willing to do something like that, I think that there are ways that it could be operated. Certainly. Yes? The cost? So, I'm sorry. Thanks. So the question is, what's the cost for my program, and then do I know the cost for county programs? I don't really know what the cost for the individual counties are. I'm pretty sure they're all different. My program is probably a little bit more expensive than the county programs. First offender pays $300 and a second offender pays $500. I think that one of the big differences with the county programs is that I think on a pretty frequent basis, the county programs actually end up losing money and going into deficit with their programs simply because they don't charge quite as much, and like I say, all of their staff is usually overtime, plus they have food cost. So even though my program's a little bit more expensive, I don't typically run into overtime, and my food budget is, pretty minimal. And then one of the great things for us is that the facilities where we run the programs, be it a high school or a camp or whatever, we get to use the facility for nothing. So it's basically a trade for work situation. So, we don't have to rent the camp or, pay the school to be in there. Yeah. Just goes to jail. I have not done that, or our agency has not done that. Part of the question is has there been any studies to see the efficientness of our programs versus somebody going to jail. So essentially, does it have an effect on recidivism? So as a private nonprofit agency, we have a really hard time mining data sometimes because we don't have access to some of the Department of Corrections software and statistics, some of the court statistics. And so if somebody, say, has their first offense OUI in Saginaw County, and then 2 or 3 years later they get a second offense in Aroostook County, I'm not going to know that. And I really don't have a way to find that out. So I've never personally done a study, and I haven't actually seen one. Okay. Well, thank you very much. Enjoy your day.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. As she said, I'm Josh Otto. I'm the assistant principal at Yarmouth High School. I've been a school administrator going on 8 years now, assistant principal the whole time. I'm at Yarmouth now. I was the assistant principal at Mount Ararat High School in Topsom for several years, and I was a history teacher there as well. I also serve on the advisory council for the Maine Youth Court. I'm very passionate about the issue of restorative practices in schools. And so I've been to many conferences similar to this and sessions and meetings and things. So I feel like I have to just start by representing my profession a little bit. So how many of you have seen the movie Ferris Bueller's Day Off? Right? Okay, so you know one of the main characters in that movie is the assistant principal, right? And you know what he's like. He's got the clipboard. He's sort of always out to catch, always out to find, always out to give detentions and suspensions. And I feel like I just need to represent my profession in that sometimes at these conferences you often hear the horror stories of schools and sort of how they don't practice restorative justice and how that means suspensions and expulsions and things like that. And that's often true. But I do want to say that, I'm familiar with most of the administrators in southern Maine, and I can tell you that the norm among school administrators is to be restorative by default. And I know that's not always easy, and I've had some really tough cases that I've had to work on, but there's a lot of hardworking school administrators in southern Maine that are working to bring restorative practices into schools. Do we have a long way to go, and is there more work to do? Absolutely. But I feel like I want to give props to some of my counterparts at other schools. So this weekend at Yarmouth High School, like many other high schools in the state, was graduation weekend. So if I'm a little bleary-eyed, it's because we had graduation and project graduation yesterday, and so I was struggling to get up this morning. And as I was in the shower, I was thinking of a story. And so you might be wondering, well, what does the shower have to do with it? Don't worry, I won't go into details. But there is a connection, and that is that I was thinking about an incident that happened when I was a history teacher at Mount Ararat. And this would have been almost exactly 10 or 11 years ago. It was either 2003 or 2004. I can't remember exactly which. And Mount Ararat had a tradition of senior pranks. Yarmouth, my current school, does not have senior pranks. Dylan, don't get any ideas for next year, okay? Dylan's one of the juniors at Yarmouth High School. So we do not have senior pranks at Yarmouth, but Mount Ararat did. And so I know there's some teenagers here and maybe some parents of teenagers. If you're ever sitting around the dinner table and your teenager says, oh yeah, we're just getting together tonight to plan this senior prank, and in the back of your mind you're thinking, is the school okay with this? You might even ask them that. And if they say, oh yeah, Mr. So-and-so, Miss So-and-so, yeah, they're all over it, they're okay with it. Let me just tell you right now, they're not. Okay? School administrators hate senior pranks. And so 2003, 2004, whenever it was, let's just say Billy and Johnny, they were actually students of mine when I was a history teacher. They had this great idea to bring toilet paper rolls to school. And right at the end of the day, right before the last period, sort of just start chucking them in the hallway, right? They're teenagers, they didn't think it through. Just a harmless prank, right? First throw, Billy, who was actually on the football team, had a good arm, really hucked one down the hallway. First 3 feet, hits a sprinkler head and knocks it off. if you know anything about sprinkler heads, when water comes out of one, it doesn't come out of just that one. It comes out of every single sprinkler head on the second floor right as period 5 was starting. Okay? So you can just imagine the disruption that caused. Imagine that the havoc that caused. We had to evacuate the building. We had to send everybody out. They couldn't return back because actually there was some chemical in the sprinklers that got released, and so they had to get the hazmat crew in. There were baseball teams and softball teams that had playoff games that couldn't go to those playoff games because they couldn't get back into the building to get their stuff. School had to get let out early. It was a huge issue. Big time issue. And I remember thinking back at that moment and thinking about some of the conversations I had with people around that time. I was a history teacher then, not a school administrator, fortunately. That would have been one of my worst days if I was the assistant principal. But I can remember the teachers being so mad. And I can remember them saying, this is the question I remember, what are they going to do to them? What are they going to get? How many days suspensions are they going to get? Are they going to be allowed to march at graduation? This was the prevalent questions being asked. And I remember just being struck by that, because I knew Billy and Johnny. They were in my class. And I talked with them after the fact. And I knew they felt awful about this. This was not what they intended. They made a huge mistake, and they knew it. And I also knew the school administrators that were trying to deal with this in the best way. And I remember them talking about really what are they going to do? And they were really kind of puzzled what to do. What they ended up doing was suspending Billy and Johnny, which was interesting because they were seniors, so they're actually done with school. So they didn't really feel like, so the teachers were feeling like, I can tell you that the students and their parents felt really bad. They knew the harm that they were caused. And the school administrators just sort of threw their hands up and didn't really know what to do. And I remember the whole thing leaving a bad taste in people's mouths. And I think about that a lot as I talk about restorative practices today. And I guess my question for you is, based on the situation that I just described, as you're hearing my presentation, think about how could Maine Youth Court have helped that situation? In what ways could it have helped move the students, the school, the community forward to a more positive place based on a really bad situation? So, I'll start by saying why, personally, I'm interested in restorative practice and restorative justice. And I think for me it comes down to one key point, which is that the traditional school discipline and the traditional juvenile justice system, I feel, is not the best response for those certain young people that absolutely need an appropriate and effective intervention. So you got the two models of sort of discipline in schools and in juvenile justice. You have the traditional model, which is sort of the Ferris Bueller model, right? I like to call it adults imposing their will. You screwed up, therefore I'm going to tell you what the consequence is. I often think about that scene from Wizard of Oz with the Wicked Witch of the West, I think. I get them mixed up. I'll get you, my pretty, and your little dog too. Right? It's like adults opposing their will, like ha ha ha. And that's kind of a wide example, but I think about that a lot because I imagine sometimes that's how teenagers are thinking about it when they're going through it. The reality is the traditional system, I feel and I've seen, does work well for some students. I was one of those students. If I got a detention, and I did get one for throwing an apple in the lunchroom, I got called down to the assistant principal's office. Mr. Winiarski, I went to high school in a very Polish-heavy area of Wisconsin, so literally everybody in the school, except for me, had ski at the end of their name. So much, they just called me Autoski. Okay, fine, just call me Autoski. I don't have a ski at the end of my name, but... So Mr. Winiarski called me into his office and said, okay, Autoski, you threw an apple, you get a detention, it's Tuesday after school, be there, and it took about 30 seconds, and I was out. I will say, though, the meaning that really I got out of that wasn't so much the detention, was that he called home. And I had to go home and talk to my parents about it, and that was a big deal for me. And I will tell you that was the traditional system, and that system worked fairly well for me. But, as I said before, those that need an appropriate intervention the most, These students that are experiencing behavior issues in school that then enter into the adult justice system, these are the people that need effective interventions the most. And the reality is, I feel that some of those traditional interventions just aren't going to work with those students, and they need that the most, and it's our mission and our goal to give them that. I think about what the renowned child psychologist Ross Greene said. He said, all students will do well if they can do well. All students will do well if they can do well. And there's a really profound sort of assumption or backing to that really does kind of fly in the face sometimes of the traditional system. There are often assumptions made about students who are misbehaving, who are getting in trouble in school and with the law. And what's really behind this statement is that if there is a misbehavior, it is due to an underlying issue, an underlying barrier that this child is having a hard time getting through. So it's our mission as a school to address that underlying barrier. So just like if a student is in math class and has some learning disability that impacts their ability to understand certain math concepts, we would not throw that student out of math class and say, sorry, you're not cutting it, try again later. We would provide direct interventions and try to pull up some of those math concepts so they're better at math in the future. And so what restorative practice is for me, and this is why I'm so passionate about it as a school administrator, is it is just that. It is an attempt to address the underlying issue. It is an attempt to help that student, that young person, grow. Is it always successful? No. But do we owe it to the students to try it and give it a good faith effort to try to help them improve so they don't have misbehavior again in the future? Absolutely. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about Youth Court, which is one practice at Yarmouth High School that we have that is a restorative practice. There are many, as you know, many types of restorative practices that can be put in place in schools. Maine Youth Court is one model of that. Yarmouth High School has been part of it for 2 or so years, give or take. Actively part of it for 2 years. I'm not going to talk a lot about the details and the nitty-gritty of Youth Court and the referral process and the respondents and how the hearings work. There's actually a session being held this afternoon on Maine Youth Court that's being led by 4 of the students that serve on Youth Court. So what I'm actually going to do is just ask those 4 students to stand up right now. Remain standing, please. If we could give them a round of applause, because so they are from Deering High School, Casco Bay High School, Greeley High School, and, Yarmouth High School. So without these students, Maine Youth Court would not exist, and really everything that Maine Youth Court does is because of the work of students. So thank you very much, you guys. I appreciate it. And really do check out their session this afternoon. I'm sure you will get a lot of your questions answered. So in a nutshell, Maine Youth Court is a way to bring restorative practices in place when students have some sort of misbehavior. They are held accountable by their peers, which again, remember the Wicked Witch model, is very different than adults sitting down with a student and saying, this is what your punishment will be. They are being held accountable by their peers. And they do so through a hearing where they're actually represented by peers as well. And I'll talk a little bit more about the process. But it's a way of really holding people accountable for their actions, but trying to boost their skills and boost their reconnections to the community at the same time. So as it says here, it's a diversion program. On this side is sort of the traditional model of punishment, shame, and exclusion. The Maine Youth Court model really fosters accountability, understanding, and connections. And as I said, rather than ostracizing youth that have some sort of misbehavior, which is what the traditional model often does, suspensions send students away from the community. Maine Youth Court keeps them connected to the community. The process is relatively simple. Well, no, that's not true at all. It's actually quite complicated. But in its sort of ideas, it's relatively simple. Its purpose is not to assess guilt or innocence. That's kind of when you think of court, you often think of sort of, you're guilty, you're innocent. That's not what Maine Youth Court does. it's a voluntary program. And so if young people are going to volunteer for it, they're going to do so because they choose to, and they've accepted guilt, quote unquote. A hearing is held. Prior to the hearing, that youth meets with some youth that will serve in that hearing. They gather facts, they get to know the students. A hearing is held that is totally 100% youth run. And through that hearing, the community's voice is heard. In particular, how is the community or how is the victim harmed by this person's actions? And in the end, they work together with the youth to try to find what they call dispositions, or what the traditional system would call consequences. So things that this student can do to repair the harm that they have caused. Often this comes in the form of community service, certainly not exclusively, but in the case of community service, it targets the areas where that young person needs the most support, or where they already have strengths. So again, as opposed to sending them away, it really fosters their strengths and helps improve their skills. In the end, they leave that hearing with some sort of timeline, and then they return back, usually within about 3 months, to see if they've accomplished those dispositions. Again, this is a real criminal in real school discipline cases. It's not mock trial or anything like that. It's the real deal. They refer both school discipline and criminal, and I say both, but it's tricky because in many cases, it's both. So if a student at Yarmouth High School comes to school with tobacco on them, there's a school policy that says if they're under 18, they get summoned by the police. That policy's been in existence since 1996. So in that case, they have a pack of cigarettes on them, they get school discipline, and then the police officer actually comes to the school and interacts with them as well. So there's an example where there's sort of two outside agencies, and then you add a third when that student gets referred to a juvenile community corrections officer. In the traditional system, those three bubbles, in the past at least, without youth court, had a hard time communicating with each other. And often the parents are involved as well. They're sort of the fourth bubble. And so you have 4 different places a student can get in trouble or feel like they're in trouble. And one of the goals of youth court is to sort of bring all of those together. So the other sort of core philosophies of youth court is that it's peer-driven and the restorative practice. So peer-driven is the part that I find the coolest in working with young people at my school in youth court. The classic line is, which comes first, the chicken or the egg? So if I'm interested in bringing restorative practices such as youth court to my school, which one should I bring? Should I try to first make referrals as a school administrator? Should I think of, okay, I've got this many students getting in trouble for this number of things. Maybe youth court is an effective way to address those. So I'm going to start making referrals. So that's one chicken or egg. Or, before I even start making referrals, do I want to get a bunch of youth at my school really interested in the ideas of restorative justice, get them trained to be a youth court volunteer, and get them serving on real cases that might not involve students from my school? So which comes first, the chicken or the egg? This one comes first, from my experiences. That if a school gets a bunch of teenagers involved and interested in restorative practice and is interested in youth court, you're going to have a real organic growth of restorative practices and an interest and a buy-in and an intrinsic motivation to participate in restorative practices. So at Yarmouth, the model that we used was we fortunately had a lot of students that were really interested in the idea of youth court. Myself and others at the school, and with the help of the youth court organizers, got people interested, and trainings were conducted where those students started learning about restorative practices and then started serving on the court. And before we knew it, we had close to 16 or 20 volunteers that knew youth court, that knew the language of youth court, knew how the hearings happened, served on real cases. This all happened before we actually, as a school, referred a case. So that was awesome, because once I made that referral for a school discipline case, the students involved with that referral already heard about youth court. And they'd heard some good things about it. And some of the parents had already heard of it too. And it just made my job so much easier as a school administrator to get buy-in from the student and parent to say why youth court is a better option than the traditional system. One of the first referrals that we made involved 4 students that were facing an expulsion hearing. And so that was an ugly situation. I really had to step out on a limb and try to convince the student and parents that maybe instead of going through the expulsion process, and I actually had to convince the superintendent as well, that maybe that youth court was a better option. And because I had that buy-in already from the school community, it was that much easier. So one of the things that we did at Yarmouth that was helpful in this as well is also early on, while we were gathering volunteers to serve on youth court, we worked directly with the superintendent and school committee to create a youth court policy. I have a whole pile of them here. If anybody would like to grab one on your way out. This was enacted about a year and a half ago. And it took a long process to really educate the school committee and the superintendent on what youth court was and why it was a better option. Yarmouth, like most school systems, have a lot of black and white policies on the book, usually at the school committee level. If you bring cigarettes to school, this is what will happen to you. If you bring drugs to school, this is what will happen to you. If you deal drugs or bring a weapon to school, this is what will happen to you. So in the case of a school administrator, unfortunately, my hands are tied when it comes to a school committee policy. Because my bosses, the school committee and the superintendent, have told me exactly how I need to handle that situation. So, and many schools deal with this. So what this policy does is it basically says, here's a list of offenses where the administrator involved, in Yarmouth High School it was usually the assistant principal, they have the option of referring to youth court in lieu of the traditional consequences or in conjunction with the traditional consequences. So for example, smoking marijuana at school, 5 to 10 days suspension. If they do youth court, it's shortened to a 2-day suspension if they also agree to see the substance counselor at school. You see, that was in conjunction. There have been cases where we've made referrals in lieu, where they just did not receive any immediate consequences but did the youth court process instead. So there's a lot of ways that can happen. So I started with an example of the shower, literally, for me, and then back 10 years ago for the whole second floor of the school. So I end with another example, and this may or may not have happened at my school. So 3 boys skip class. 2 of them skip math class with the same teacher. 1 of them skips science class. They head out to the dugouts in the baseball field right behind the school. You know, there's 90-minute classes at Yarmouth, so that's a lot of time to be hanging around. They start getting their magic marker out and doing graffiti on the dugouts. They smoke some marijuana, and they get caught. So the traditional consequence, the black and white policies on the book say exactly what should happen to that student. What I have found, though, because youth court is an option at my school, I'm able to really engage with those students and those parents on how they can work to repair the harm. And I guess my question for you is, as you think about the case of the senior prank and as you think about this case, where is the harm done with a couple boys skipping class and smoking a joint? Well, let me think. What if I told you that math teacher had just met with that student and his parents that morning because he was failing math? And they had put together this whole plan where they were going to work on math, he was going to stay after, it was going to be this whole thing, this big push to improve his math grade. What if I told you that there were several members of the baseball team that heard about this and were really impacted by the fact that there was graffiti in their dugout? So those are just a couple examples, but my point is there was a lot of harm done that's a little bit below the surface. And the final thing I'll say is that as a school administrator, I had a tremendous amount of leverage in that moment when I sat those students down in my office and I called their parents in, because it was a big deal to them and it was a big deal to their parents. And if I could present to them this idea of, here's this other option that doesn't involve as lengthy of a suspension or a suspension at all, and in the end, this is what you'll get out of the process. That leverage is something that's really hard to recreate. And, you know, as a school administrator, Maine Youth Court works really well for that. So that's my presentation. Does anyone have any questions? Yeah?
How many school systems use this, and which ones are?
So the question was, how many school systems in the greater Portland area use this? I would say 3 school systems use it sort of in full. That would be Yarmouth, Portland, and Deering. I'm thinking I included Portland in all of those. I think Mount Ararat and Brunswick have all made referrals and have volunteers as well. I think there's more than 3 that just sort of have their tentacles in the system as well. Not as many as we'd like. We're working on it.
How did the faculty come on board? Was there skepticism? Were some for it, some against it? How did you respond to that?
Yeah, great question. She asked, how did the faculty at Yarmouth, and I can speak to Mount Ararat as well because Mount Ararat went through a similar process when I was there, how did they respond to the ideas of youth court or restorative practices? It's definitely something you have to pay attention to and educate and don't take for granted. As I said about school administrators, the same goes for teachers. At the beginning, teachers, their default is to be supportive. Their default is to be caring. But when harm is done to their community where they work, or when somebody sort of is disrespecting what they do, there is a lot of harm done there. And unfortunately, that sometimes translates into the hang 'em high model of like, somebody screws up, let's go, let's suspend them. I want to know how many days. Let's kick them out, And so, but I think if you really educate them on what the process is, and as Sarah pointed out, the statistics show that restorative practices such as youth court actually feel like more of a consequence to students. They sort of feel it more, and they get more out of it. And so teachers, when they hear that, they really are persuaded, but it's still work. I'd say every time I make a referral, I have to meet directly with those teachers that are sort of impacted by that behavior and just talk that through with them because they have to kind of go through it every time. Question right over here.
What's the demographic of your typical peer leader, or the peers that you, and how do you recruit them, and how does that compare to the demographic of those who are referred to these peers, and how do you feel that this is affecting the overall school culture or relationships among the students?
Yeah, great question. The question was, how are students recruited? Sort of what is the demographic of those students recruited? How does that relate to the demographic of those that are referred? And then how does that impact the school culture? That's a great question. So I can only speak for Yarmouth. As Mike said, there are many other schools that participate. In Yarmouth, I would say the type of student that volunteers for youth court is a typical Yarmouth student. There really isn't anything that I can say about their demographics besides they do represent a wide range of students. In fact, they're recruited primarily through teachers and advisors that really think they would be good at youth court. Some of the students that have volunteered for youth court at Yarmouth have been in trouble before, and actually we feel that they bring a really great voice to the process. And so they can learn a lot just by going through the training that helps them as an individual. And the impact on the school culture is enormous. There's just definitely a nice vibe amongst the volunteers. It's kind of this cool, it's not a club, but it's something they participate in. And they really have a lot of camaraderie around that. But it also impacts how teachers talk to students about misbehavior in class. They start using some of the phrases I noticed. Like I had a teacher say, shout out, "How are you going to restore the harm?" And I was like, don't shout at them, but that's a great question. That's a great way to process that with the students. So, it has an influence in a lot of different areas. But it's taken time, and it's still in the process. So I just want to check in. How much time do we have left for questions? One more. Okay, so I'll go over here. And then, by the way, if there's any questions that don't get answered, I'll be here. And as I said before, there's a whole session all about youth court, led by these 4 youth that will answer those questions.
If I have students that say, you said, as community referrals, how do students there get training to serve the county?
Yeah. So she asked, if a school is not actively making referrals, how does a student get trained? Short answer is, I believe any student from any school can be trained and be a volunteer. Youth Court is not an officially sanctioned school club or activity. It's a regional organization that local youth participate on. So really, a school can't stop any of their students from participating. I think the key is, are they going to be aware of the trainings as they happen and things like that? Yeah, she asked like, how do students find out about the training? Ideally, it's if their school administrators and counselors and teachers are sort of putting out those notices. Yeah, that's a good question. Youth Court can't just go into a school and put flyers up. Facebook page, thank you. Yep. So if anybody needs help communicating with their school superintendent or principals, I'm happy to help, and anybody in Youth Court's happy to help. We're happy to set up any meetings to try to get that word out there. Great. Maine Youth Court is the Facebook page. Yeah. Great. Thank you all for your time.
Good morning, everybody. It's still morning, although it's about 85 degrees outside. It's wonderful to see this great crowd of people, so many familiar faces and some wonderful new ones to get to know. My name is Tessie Seward, and I am one of 3 directors of Maine Inside Out. And I'll make a quick distinction there between Maine Inside Out and the Inside Out project of Temple University, which you may have heard of if you're knowledgeable in the restorative justice circles. That's a program where college professors teach college classes inside facilities with a mixed group of students from their university and also inmates from facilities. And it's a wonderful project. It's done all over the country. We are a little different. Maine Inside Out is a nonprofit arts organization, and we do creative collaborations with incarcerated and formerly incarcerated individuals to create and share original theater. So that's going to be a little bit of what you'll get to share in today with us. We're about 7 years old. We've done projects around the state of Maine, but primarily in the last few years, we've been working at the Long Creek Youth Development Center, which is a facility for juveniles 11 to 21 in South Portland. The performance that we're going to share this morning was created by a group of 8 young men in the fall of 2013 as part of a symposium we put on in Portland called The Culture of Punishment, From Parenting to Prisons. We've heard the words culture of punishment already today. And that symposium was a week-long exploration of the way that the punishment paradigm is applied in homes, in schools, and in the justice system. And the play, which came out of our exploration of that, really addresses the impact of the traditional punishment paradigm on a young person as he grows and moves through his own life. The work that we do, arts, socially engaged arts, sometimes it's called, or arts for social justice, has so many profound foundational values in common with restorative philosophy. So before we share this performance, I just want to name a few of those and talk quickly about why it works, about why it's important. As has been mentioned several times, one of the primary consequences of the traditional punishment paradigm is a sense of disconnection and isolation. That when harm is done in a community, and the response is very punitive, it further exacerbates the disconnection that was created by the harm. And what we've found is that the arts can be a really powerful medium for rebuilding that connection, for restoring relationship, and for strengthening overall a community. In our programming, this happens on 2 levels. Certainly the group, as they work together over 6 or 8 weeks, they get to know each other, they play a lot of games together, they learn the physical language of theater. They learn how to use their voices to tell a story. And they build relationships with each other, trusting relationships. Some of you may know this, but to get up here and perform for an audience of 10 or 1,000 is pretty scary. It's really scary. And in order to support each other and to hold themselves up in this process, the group learns to hold each other up. And that's a really amazing process. The second part of our work involves connections with the community outside. So that's where all of you come in as our audience today. The experience you have seeing this piece and your responses and the thoughts and the feedback that you share start to break down that wall of separation between the performers and all of you. I think you'll be able to see them for the incredible people that they are, and they will be able to learn a little bit more about you too. And that's part of the process of tearing down those walls and building community, creating a community that we are all taking ownership of and are proud to live in. There will be time after this performance for sharing your thoughts. That's kind of the best way to start out, I think, is to just share what you experienced, share what touched you, and then if you have questions for the performers or for me about Maine Inside Out, we will be able to have some space for that too. Sound good? Everybody ready? Okay. The original title of this play was Journey Through Punishment. There's only one original member of the group performing for you today. The other ones have, in some cases, moved on from the facility. In other cases, were not able to be here today. So this is a group of young men who have been performing this a little bit more recently, some of whom just got to practice their parts for today very recently. But they are confident and excited to share this, and I think you're going to enjoy it very much. So please welcome the Forgotten Ones, as they've named themselves, and Journey Through Punishment.
Starts at 2 and ends at 3. Forced to fight another day, because that's what I was taught. Looking back at it all, did we deserve what we got? Just 6 years old, a curious little boy. His grandfather's favorite antique airplane hanging from the ceiling. When he pulled his string, its wings flapped. In all his curiosity, he pulled its string too hard and it fell from the ceiling. In his grandfather's rage, he gave it one furious slap and sent him crying to the corner. All he could do was apologize.
I'm sorry, Grandpa, I tried. If I don't teach him now, I'll also be behaving.
Now about 13, he told his dad he was doing well in school. So, his dad told me to take him out to the Ruby Tuesdays as a treat. On the way there, he got an unsuspected phone call from the English teacher, telling him he wasn't doing as well as he thought. He hung up the phone and turned the car around. As he pulled up to the house, he got out of the car and yelled, and sent him to his room. As he sat on his bed, he knew it was coming. When it was over, he gained the nerve to ask his dad if they could go back to Ruby Tuesdays.
I tried, man, I tried. My son's gonna change one way or another.
Now about 16, he found himself in the principal's office. The principal's frustrated because this hadn't been the first time this week he'd seen his face in his office. And in a rage, these words left his lips.
You're wrong, kid. Someday you're gonna end up in prison. Yeah? I hope I do. I'm glad I don't have to deal with this kid anymore. No one cares about me.
Shortly after this, he walked outside. And a kid that was known for dealing in the streets waved him over. He decided he'd take him underneath his wing.
Hey, you woman. Yeah, you come in. What's up? What's going on, man? Man, look like you're struggling right now. I'm struggling a lot. Alright, I got something so you can get some money right here. Well, really, man, I appreciate this, man. Thanks. Alright, man. Alright. Well, man, somebody put this kid to work. Find somebody to care for him. Alright.
Things started to go wrong with his new friends. And about a year later, he found himself on probation. In his PO's office, he went across state lines to see his pregnant girlfriend, but his PO just wasn't having it, and simply responded with a big no.
This isn't my fault. Plus, I don't really care. Yeah? Well, I don't care either.
With that response, he decided he'd drink the pain away. His friend stumbled by him in all the struggle and thought he would help him out, or so he thought.
Hey, yo, get up. What's going on, man? You look like trash. And I feel like trash. I say no more. I got something for you to get you back on your feet. Oh, yo, man, I appreciate this, man. Second time, good looks. Yeah, but this is the last time now. Bro, I got you, man. I understand. Thanks. Alright. Man, every day, it's a struggle. My mom. Yo, freeze! Yo, man, what's going on, man? Come on, what you doing? What's this? Yo, man, it's not mine. It's not mine. I got arrested. It's not mine.
Hey!
You, unwilling to forgive. Hey, what? I, isolation.
S, shame.
H, hostility. M, mental and emotional scars. E, enraged.
N, negative thoughts.
T, time. Yo, let me out. Get me out of here, man. Who are you? Who are you people, man? Who are you guys? Who are you guys? Who are you? I'm my son. Growing up in Paradise ain't easy. Struggling just to get to school. Trying to play this game called life. Who are you?
I'm Austin Battle. I have goals just like all of you. I'm also a wrestler, so when you can't find me on the mat, you can find me in the weight room.
Who are you? I'm Cooper James. Since I've been locked up, I've lost a lot of loved ones. Doing time is stressful, because time else doesn't wait. Who are you?
I'm Muhammad Rue. I'm my own person. I'm wise and articulate. When people see me, they wonder. Don't judge a book by its cover.
And I am Nick on cross. If I'm not dancing, singing, rapping, or maybe even drumming, I'm outside on the court or inside the gym playing basketball. So yeah, I'm not a criminal. You and I, we're one the same. We both make mistakes. Circumstances affect decisions. Until this day, we're searching and exploring. People do change.
This is our question. What's yours?
work, guys. Great work. We'd love to hear from you. Stand up and speak nice and loud.
I think I can do that. First of all, thank you. That was an awesome production. Glad you guys are here. There's nothing more powerful than the youth, the voices of the youth in our communities that can really tell these stories. My question is, are you guys going to take this on the road?
I mean, actually, we've been on the road. You know, we went to Portland High School, went to Rangeley, we've been to Catholic Charities, we've been to Biddeford, so we've been all around. Actually, this is our last show, all together, because a lot of us are actually leaving. So, yeah.
If we can, I'm there.
Yeah, we've been to other high schools, and I don't know if we still are, but when we get out, we were hoping to make another group, and it was going to be a comedy.
Well, in all, this one's my last one. I only have 29 days, and if there was another one, I don't think it would be within that time. So my time has come.
This is also my last one, too, so not much to say. Well, I think this program has made me more wiser, because I was more of a childish type of guy. I didn't really want to grow up so fast, but hanging with these guys is kind of hard for that. But this is a good group of guys. I think we've learned a lot. Just going out into the world, being incarcerated is just a good feeling, just to give back.
See, I like to keep things on edge. I'm unpredictable. So, being with this group, it really opens your eyes to see audience reaction. When I waved you all up, I wasn't expecting you guys to get up. I was expecting for you to go louder, but it worked out. So, all in all, it works out, and if there was another one, I'd be there.
I think this program has helped me out because before I got incarcerated, I was more I was sheltered, and doing this just makes me more comfortable with everybody around me.
What really changed me in this group was, it was one word that they taught me, it was redemption, that people can change. And so I realized it and took the chance to change myself and be a good son for my mom over there.
For me, it definitely taught me how to work with other people because, when I got into jail, my first thought was, don't make any friends. These people aren't your friends. You're here to do your time and get out. But, when I came to this group, I knew, a couple people. But ultimately, it's not like I didn't dislike them. I disliked them or anything. It's just that, I didn't know them, didn't want to get to know them. But, I definitely opened up to them. I know them a lot now. I feel like I could say we're good friends. So it definitely, taught me to work with other people and that, just don't judge people. So, that's just definitely something that helped me with. Any other questions?
This is my second time seeing this performance. I saw it the first time it was performed, and both times it's had a huge impact on me. I've worked with your population in Chicago and New York City, and I know most of the guys that I've worked with who were locked up for years, there's no way they would have put it out there like you guys did. And the last group now, the rest of the guys that are gone that I saw last time, how can you take what you've had given to you and how can you take it and make it last longer? How can you help yourselves in the transition of getting out? Are there ideas? Have there been talks? How can you guys create an arts theater performance gang outside so that you have that support and you have the confidence that you guys have now when you get back home? Because that's what I'd love to see, and I'd love to hear if there's been thoughts and kind of talking about it with this audience.
That's definitely a hard question right there. For me, I really can't say I'm going to be making a new, play and stuff because my family lives out of state in Ohio, so, my plan is to go out there. So, definitely, if I could do anything, help other kids, the younger kids, definitely, because I have little siblings and, I want to be a role model for them. So, anything, definitely, I'll be part of.
First, we probably need y'all help because you're just doing it for Long Creek, right? Yeah, but if I get out, if any of y'all doing it like an actress or arts, anything, hit me up. I'm there.
Yeah, when I had my school reintegration meeting, I told them that I was in this group, and they were like, well, we have a class here, and they do performances and stuff like that. So I signed up to get in that class, so when I get out, I'm going to be performing at my school and stuff.
Well, that's new news to me. Jeez. I'm going to be moving out of state. But, anything to really help. If I was still here, I'd do anything to be put back with the three ladies that put this together. They're just wonderful, and I probably wouldn't have done it for anybody else.
Well, for me, I might be going to Chicago, so I'm going to try to enroll in the college down there and maybe join their drama class or something. Just do something positive, just to give back because, like he said, I have younger siblings as well. And I don't want them to make the same mistakes I did because it's like a, how can I say, like a big void in your life. You do learn from it, but some people don't. And right now I learn from this, so I just want to help.
I'll just quickly say in response to that question that while our primary programming right now is inside, this question comes up again and again whenever people see this work. And so re-entry support and planning is becoming a big part of our focus. We've just helped start a Southern Maine Re-Entry Coalition that meets on the first Tuesday of every month in Portland. You can learn more about that on our website or give us an email or a call. And then we, right now, are doing our best to stay in touch with individual kids who are getting out and support them. Right before we came in here today, one of our previous members who's now in Ohio getting started with school and reunited with his family gave a call to talk to each of these guys individually and give them a little encouragement and support for getting up here to do this big final show. And we hope to have an outside theater group as well in Portland that will meet once a month at a community location and be a gathering place for people who want to continue doing some of this work when they're out.
Yes. I was just wondering if each of the students, of the actors, would comment about something their high school could have done differently for them.
Definitely, for me, it would have been the suspensions, definitely. I just got suspended for, every little thing for not showing up for class. So, that just gave me more free time to do what I wanted to do. So that's definitely, there was no work inside the school. If I did something wrong, it would be just automatically suspensions. And I felt that didn't even help a lot. I actually liked, getting suspended. If I was to get like something in school, I would hate that more and would stop doing it. But since I was getting suspended a lot, I definitely, just went and hung out with my friends. So, that's just definitely a big part. Kids just have a lot of free time, do whatever they want. And I feel that's just not even good. For me, just suspensions didn't help one bit, Me and my friends would just get suspended so we could hang out.
You can't really blame it all on the school. I take ownership. Some of it was me, but something that they could have done different was probably talk to the kids. They could have talked to me and try to understand what I was going through.
Yeah, I have to agree with Rune on that one because they'd always immediately just suspend you or put you in detention, and they never actually try to figure out what was wrong or, like he said, what were you going through. So when they suspended you, it's like, yeah, you have more free time to do whatever you want. You don't have to go to school for a couple of days. You're laid back. And then you just go back to school and do the same thing so you can get out of school again, and it just doesn't help.
They never offered to know me as a person. They always assumed, oh, you're getting into, a little criminal mischief here, So, I was always known at my school as the kid who took off the M off of Massabesic and made it Assabesic. So, I was always the type of kid that would go around and look for things that were funny, and people would get humor out of it, and the school would never appreciate it, so they would always seek the worst route for me, and they wouldn't really try to get to know me. They would call my mom periodically just telling her, oh, your son's rotten, or something to put her down about me, and it just never really affected me, so I just kept on lashing out.
Well, for me, I would say being more involved in the students' lives. Some teachers, they see the negatives, but they don't see the positives. So it's like, I zoned out. I would say is, for me, teachers always call my mom if I did something bad, like just tiny bad, and then one day my mom showed up in class. So it was embarrassing, but I would just say, get involved with the students. Because oh man, what's the next question? He asked us how important to us was it to have the volunteers coming and helping us out. I think it was very important. I appreciate them coming in because if they didn't come in right now, I'd probably be back in the unit just doing nothing, watching TV or sitting down. So, I'm glad to let you guys see my talent, for one, and and our stories. So, I appreciate that a lot.
I would probably be doing the same thing. I would just be sitting in the unit in my committed clothes, living that sad life for another 29 days, and just really not doing anything productive. And this kind of makes me happy. I enjoy myself when I'm up here, and I get to do it with a bunch of great guys.
For me, I guess it just kind of makes me glad that people out in the world actually care about you, even though they don't know you personally, but they still come in and try to get to know you.
I'm thankful that y'all came through. Thank you.
I mean, it's definitely important because, you know, you're in the facility, not doing anything. So when people come in, you know, try to help you, that's just nice. And like he said, you know, it definitely shows that they care because, you know, when you come in, a lot of people you thought cared about you really don't. Like your old friends, you know, they don't write you, they don't do anything with you. The only people that you find out that care is your family. Those are the people that are sending you money, that are writing you, that are telling you that they love you, and that they miss you, and that they want you to get out. So, you know, when you see other people, I mean, it just shows that there's good people out there and not just, you know, evil people that just, you know, you thought were your friends, and then you did all that stuff for them, you know, helped them out, and then look what they got to show for, you know, nothing. So it's definitely nice. And it's something to do, you know, and instead of me getting in trouble talking back to staff because I just feel like arguing, have nothing to do, you know, it gives me something to do, something to think about, and something definitely look forward to and use as motivation. So, I mean, that's about it right there.
I just want to say how honored I am that you have given this audience a moment of just marveling at this particular age group. You know, what you just said is that, you know, you were arguing with someone, and, you know, a lot of you said really amazing things in terms of your particular age group. And what we have to step back and marvel at is your ability to argue. Your mind is thinking in completely different ways. Your relationships are completely different in adolescence. And I get to work with adolescents as well. And I just step back and I think, oh my gosh, see how this young person's thinking, and see what they're able to do with this incredible mind, as opposed to when you were 9 years old and really didn't have the insight that you have right now. So yay for you for being able to do, you know, to do this work, to connect with the arts, to get each other's back, and know that you're going to move out into the world and be incredible adults with your skill sets. So thank you. I'm marveling at you.
Thank you. Like what though? I mean, one thing that, you know, definitely that people could do is, you know, work on the court system, because I feel that, you know, that definitely wasn't helpful for me going through that whole process of, you know, going to court, because you know, when I was going to court and stuff, my lawyer would come talk to me, and I try to argue my points over, you know, why I should get less time or why I should get out. But he never tried to help. You know, he would just be like, oh, this is what the district attorney wants, and this is what's going to happen. If you want to argue about it, you could take it to trial. And, you know, definitely wasn't that definitely wasn't an option for me at that time. So I definitely, you know, people in that system, you know, definitely need to have people that care and definitely want the kids to change, because they didn't look at me like as you guys do, you know, as a young kid just that made a mistake. They looked at me like a criminal that definitely isn't going to make it, that's probably going to end up in prison. So, I mean, that's just not look down on me, and that just whole process definitely want to help kids and not just put them away, because, like, at that moment I felt that, you know, nobody cared about me, and I was just in that little zone of myself, you know, so definitely didn't help. So you need, you know, people to care about you when they see that, oh, they're trying to help. I didn't think at all that they were trying to help. I felt like they were against me, that it was war between me and the whole system. Everybody there, even the court, the judge, the lawyer, everybody that was there, I felt was against me. Nobody was with me there. So, you know, in any way that, I don't know if you guys could do anything about that, but, like, just talk to somebody about that, because I feel that definitely needs to change. I feel that it was corrupt at that moment. That's about it.
I mean, just keep doing what y'all doing. Just listen to our stories. Really appreciate that. And if we got like a show coming up, we really appreciate if you guys would be there. Follow her on Facebook, MainInsideOut.com, right?
Yeah, just try to get to know us. Don't just like. Yeah, that's all I have to say.
Well, I mean, it all starts at a young age. It really does. I mean, I was impacted by school when I was in elementary school. I mean, just doing little dumb things out in the playground. I mean, and the principal would take it to the extreme, and I'm like, come on, man, I'm just like a little kid. And then you grow up, and you understand what you're doing. You think about what you do, but you still get the same punishment, and you apologize, and you can prove to the person, but when you know the person does the worst thing possible to you, you don't want to do anything you can to keep yourself from doing that same thing over again. You don't want to go on their side. You want to go against them. So, I mean, basically hear what we have to say, and, yeah, put in your guys' input, because, I mean, you have to. And, you know, just understand us. Don't go against us.
I would say is, don't be afraid to help, you know. Yes, there's troublesome youth, but we need your advice to help us out. I know some of us don't want to hear it, but the more you keep repeating it, we're going to have to hear it one way or the other. So we just need you guys to help us out, you know. That's it.
All right. There's two things that I need to do. I need to give one shout out for the group members that started this but couldn't be here. You know, we need to always be in remembrance of Ollie, Zach Gregoire, Cody Williams, Tim Shannon, Anthony Lapointe, Dalton Skillings, and Lonzo Small. The second thing, this wonderful lady and two other wonderful ladies sadly couldn't be here to see our last performance. But without this lady and the other two, we would not be here. Nobody else would come in and fight for us to go off grounds as hard as she has and the other three ladies have. I want to give them a big round of applause for this lady. Come on, get up.
All right. Thank you. So we're going to be joining everybody for lunch. If you are lucky, you'll get to snag a table with some of these guys and hear a little bit more about their lives and their experiences. And yeah, MaineInsideOut.org is our website, and we would love to have material and